Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Let the Journey Begin. I'm your host, Hilary Roberts, alongside my co-host, Jason Waller.
Hello, Hilary.
Hi, Jay. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm good.
You know, I know we do catch up at this time, and I know that you've lost someone very near and dear to you.
Yeah. We lost, Grandma Johnny, who was a very instrumental part of our life. She was a grandmother that was, very involved, ever since I could remember. She was the grandma that would, show up to every single baseball game. She would, come to every game that we had. She took us fishing, since we were 2, 3, 4. I'll never forget, when I went with her and I fell off the dock. And but she was very involved in our life. So, I'm very, very grateful, but obviously, there's a lot of, processing going on right now and just going through the motions of grief. And, this is the first time where I've really seen my mom, really, really down and out, which is adds on to it. So not only are you grieving from that process, but seeing my mom be super, super upset and emotional about it makes it even harder. But I am very grateful that she was, my grandmother and a part of our life. And, I'm very fortunate that me and my brother actually had the last hurrah with her about 2 months ago. We went out to Vegas where she was residing for the last, 12 to 15 years, whatever it was. And we went out, got a limo, picked her up, took her to the Strip, got her she's not an alcoholic, but we ended up getting her a beer and got her in and out and took her to the casino she did not want to leave. We gambled for like 4 or 5 hours and penny slots. We just had went to Sam's Town, we went to the Strip, hung out, and then we went back to Sam's Town because she doesn't like gambling in the big casino. So we did a big loop, came back, and just had a really special moment. We had her caretaker with us, and my brother and I, we just had a really cool last moment with her. So very fortunate to be able to experience that with her and to have those memories. And unfortunately, this week we're in the process of putting the funeral together. But it's a challenging time, but it's also amazing to be fully present and to have this last month. We flew her out, or we had her transported out to California, and so the family was able to spend every single day with her while she was out here, and so it was very meaningful to have her here. You want to tell the listeners about her diagnosis, because I don't think everybody so she
knows.
ended up having lung cancer, stage 4 lung cancer, and ended up the cancer went to her brain, and so it got worse and worse. Obviously, while she was here, so the last few weeks she wasn't able to talk or anything like that, but she was able to show signs of recognition when we'd show up and be present with her. So, but yeah, that's kind of what we're going through. But I think it's really special to be sober and to be in that moment to really embrace all this and to have that her last month of life here. Something that was very present in my life, and to be every time I'd show up, I was, in the moment and really embrace the time I had with her. So
I just love that baby Wyatt was born and that she got to see you sober.
Yeah. And that was one of the last things I'm happy you brought that up, because baby Wyatt was the one wish that she had when we were in Vegas. She goes, I have to see that baby before I go. So it was really special to see, when we brought Wyatt to see her, she just broke down, and, it was very special.
Oh, I'm so happy for you, my friend.
I appreciate that.
Oh, gosh.
Thank you. But on another note, we have your beautiful family back here.
We do. And last week we had my sister-in-law.
Lisa bringing the heat.
Bringing the heat. Lisa Brown Roberts. And today we have my brother, Erik with a K, Roberts, and Lisa. Erik and Lisa Roberts, to talk about married life and everything they've gone through with all of that. And they've been married a long time. So everybody welcome Erik and Lisa.
Erik.
Thank you.
How you doing, bro? Lisa, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Erik, your wife set the bar pretty high, bro.
So
we're going to get into it today. So you guys have been married for 35 years, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Right, okay. But it hasn't always been smooth sailing. And Lisa, you talked a little bit about that in the last week when you were here. So could you guys tell us about that process of what it was like, in the early stages of marriage and some of those bumpy roads that you guys experienced?
We met back in, 83. It would be fall of 83. I don't know how far back we want to go, but
I like that.
And all the stories. But we were taking an English class together, and
First year of college.
Exactly. First year of college for both of us. I had taken what's now referred to as a gap year, and I think my grandfather referred to it as a screwing off year. So,
Right.
Yeah. So came back and started school down at University of Colorado in Denver, and we met in an English class, and I basically warned Lisa that our professor was going to be probably hitting on her. And at that point, and I also had a broken jaw at the time, because when I first met Lisa, I was pool hopping and ended up getting our clothes stolen, and I confronted the folks to tell them that they were for doing that. And
They beat the crap out of you.
And they beat the crap out of me.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So that was quite the introduction to you, Lisa.
Yeah, I wasn't at the pool hopping event. That was pre-me, different girl. But I saw the
Got
after
it.
effects.
But you guys ended up connecting there in school, and you guys obviously were here today, right? So that obviously spun off into something good there. And I think, Lisa, you were talking to us a little bit about, when you guys first got together, and when you guys first got married, though, there was, some of the struggles of the financial stuff to you doing some discovery on your guys' self and what direction you guys were wanting to go. How did you guys go through those periods together? How were you guys supportive to one another during those times?
Well, I think we always make each other laugh. I mean, it's really a relationship built on friendship first, and
Very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think that it's really important. We talked about this, just the two of us, when we were talking about meeting with you today. And so many times you hear, marriage advice when you ask couples, well, how do you do it? And people say, don't go to bed angry. And we both think that's a load of BS.
Okay.
I've certainly gone to bed angry plenty of times.
Right.
Because sometimes you're just not ready to forgive or have that conversation, or it's a longer,
You need to
longer
sleep
piece
on
of
it.
communication. Yeah. So
I think oftentimes there's just a lot of circumstances and context that prevent you from being able to work through the issues, be it, you're hangry, you're in pain for whatever various, physical pain, emotional pain, and not necessarily clear about it, but you need a little bit of distance in order to be able to reconcile and clean up oftentimes the issues that do crop up. Because, some of the best advice I ever heard was, it's not so much about avoiding conflict and avoiding the fights, it's how you clean them up.
Right.
And that has proven to be instrumental in terms of, apologizing. And that's often an ongoing process and effort as well. It's not just a one-time event type of thing.
Correct.
So
Well, if there's not problems or arguments, there's no growth.
right.
Amen.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, those things have to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
So I have a question for you guys, because I know that you guys went to California. I know that there was a lot of financial pressure, and then the earthquake happened. You guys moved back to Denver. And I remember you guys were having some struggles, and then you guys sought out therapy. What led up to that? And how did that, so what was going on?
Well, I would say, ups and downs, right? And then things were going really great, I think, for both of us. Pretty much, we talked some about some of my health issues and stuff. But then when I got pregnant with our son, that was, obviously a life-changing, right, event. And right after our son was born, if some listeners may remember, the early 2000s, the dot bomb, as they called it. There was a big kind of a crash in the tech industry, which you worked in, and you lost your job. And
Yeah, because I was, I guess leading up while Lisa was pregnant, I was working typically at least 55 to 70-hour weeks.
Wow.
Then after our son was born, I tried scaling a lot of that back, and yet still was working crazy hours because I was working for some startups, quote unquote.
Right.
And then after, when Ethan came onto the scene, I was really questioning what kind of a father I would be. Just really doubting myself throughout so much of that process. And as a result of the dot bomb, period, basically the company, the startup that we were working with ended up basically saying, well, we don't need your services and the whole group of our services anymore. So as a result, there was a group of us that got let go. And I was questioning all aspects of my life, and in turn started really falling into some spiraling deep depression and not realizing the extent of it. Went on to some, I guess, to work through some aspects of it, but still feeling very distant. And it wasn't until we lost basically all of the stuff from my not working, that we had 2 houses at one point. We had, I don't know, some $400,000 in 401k, and ended up liquidating all of that just to survive and get by for that 2.5 year period where basically I was unemployed / underemployed. And so lost all the stuff, and it really brought things to such a head where I was becoming the self-fulfilling prophecy of what kind of a bad father I could potentially be by neglecting through this neglect. And Lisa's like, we've got to get into serious therapy. And so we tried a couple of different therapists. I didn't realize what an arduous process that would be as well, in terms of just finding somebody who's going to be the right fit for you, et cetera. And then we've found somebody who really helped us to help ourselves tremendously, and still see him today.
It's been almost 20 years.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing all that with us. So I have a question though. So some people may be unsure, if they should seek therapy or just work things out like amongst themselves. What would be your take on that? Like, should we seek therapy, or should we just try to figure these things out? And when does it get to the point where, okay, I got to get a professional?
I'm a very, very strong believer in seeking out good quality therapy. I mean, obviously it has to be somebody who jives with you, and you don't just select any therapist, but I think you absolutely need to have good, solid people who you work with who are able to reflect back what they're hearing from you, but also in turn provide some perspective on kind of what, lines of inquiry with regards to what may be some of the motivating factors that are impacting you and causing you to go into these different places of neuroses. I mean, we all live with our insecurities.
Of course.
And I think that the more that we get to examine those and be present with those, as well as just present with our emotions, the more, the healthier we are.
Correct.
Instead of just I could deal with this on my own. And if I just I can read self-help books, et cetera, I think that's only part of the equation. I think it's critical that we get that kind of a feedback loop where we can find out what are the things we're doing right and what are the things we're doing wrong.
No, for me, one of the biggest things when I seeked out, I've always seen therapists my whole life, but for my marriage specifically is when we lost the ability to have effective communication. And we needed somebody to come in and be a bystander to be able to kind of help us. When we would just try to talk about the most simple things, they'd blow up. Mm-hmm. And we lost that ability to be able to do that. So that was just one form for us where we needed to have a therapist come in, is because our communication was no longer effective. Mm-hmm. So that's empowering, how did you know you needed to seek help? Like what was that turning point?
We were in such a place of I was in such a place of hopelessness.
What did that look like? What were the situations going on?
Well, we were losing our house. We'd lost all our savings. Erik was not working. He was not trying to find work. He was I'd never seen him. He was not the person I knew, and loved. He was just in such a dark place, and I was getting really scared for him.
How long did all this go on?
Oh,
before you seeked help for
probably a couple of years.
Yeah, it was. It was a solid 2.5 years.
Yeah,
wow. And I think the big catalyzing event though was you in turn saying, "I can't be around you while you're going through this," and basically asking me to move out.
So a boundary was set, is what happened.
Exactly. And so that was my point where I went and lived with my best friend, and in turn, fortunately it was only for a week, but it was one of those things it opened up my eyes of, wow, I have got to change.
Right.
some major aspects of my life.
Wow.
Maybe only a week, but it seemed probably like 6 months.
Oh, it did.
Right.
And Ethan was, 2-ish, right around there, and I was just hurting so much.
Yeah, being a father and having a 6 week old and almost a 4-year-old now. I mean, what was it like as a guy going through that process too? I mean, with having, you said your son was 2, right? How was it trying to like process and cope? I couldn't even imagine being in that situation. I mean,
well, one of the things that I have smoked a lot of weed, and I have imbibed in a lot of alcohol. And one of the things that I found that is I needed to cut all of that out. I had to go after sobriety for clarity of thought. I had to get
And he's not an alcoholic, FYI. He's not like we are, but he was kind of doing the hard drinking.
Very much.
There's a total difference between a hard drinker and an alcoholic.
Yeah, and I had to get that.
I remember that. I remember when you were going through that, though.
Yeah, it was, and be present with my sadness, and that was really, really tough because I wanted to escape it so badly. It was one of those things where we seek out other diversions as well, and I often would do that either through substances or through work and exercise as well at times. Where it's so easy to try and do what are the distractions I can find, and I had to go back to center and realize, okay, I need to be doing a lot more work on Erik. And then in turn, I was able to come back and then talk with Lisa much more effectively. It still was such a rocky road, especially.
It was really hard. I mean, it took, years really for you to work through your stuff, and then us as a couple, because things had broken down so much.
Right.
I love our therapist. He's like one of my favorite people in the world. And I think of him as, when you've been seeing somebody that long, it's like, I think of him as just a dear friend.
Sure.
And, there are times, and we still go like every month. And sometimes we just sit around and chat because we're in a really healthy place. But then something will come up and it'll be like, oh, we definitely have a topic for today.
Right. And it's amazing to see. I mean, my story relates so much to you guys. I mean, me and my wife see a therapist once a week still, just because it's, again, we're in a great place, but it's just been we've seen such a dramatic effect, so I think anybody that's out there that is going through, some trying times, I mean, it doesn't have to just be in a relationship. It's just in general. I think getting a second perspective on what it is that you're walking through is always very beneficial, because when we keep trying it ourselves, we keep getting ourselves back to those same places. You know what I mean? It's literally the definition of insanity. And until we can get a different perspective on it, it oftentimes doesn't change.
Yeah.
So in taking the steps that you've both taken, and I guess I'll start with you, Erik, how is your perception of yourself as a father today?
Wow. It's a night and day experience. It's interesting because I've been in the computer world for 30 some years, and yet I feel that my real strength is I'm a very good parent. I am an excellent father. I feel like I'm still continuing to work hard at being a good husband.
You're pretty good.
And it still takes work. It takes so much effort and time, but also any relationship that we have of meaning and import, you got to put that time into it. And I'm proud is maybe not quite the right word, but it's the closest word I can think of. I'm proud of the work that I do and continue to do, and I also see how much more I can do and want to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And thank God I've got this woman here with me as well. It's because it's an amazing, crazy ride, and I can't imagine doing it by myself. So
I love that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
For you, Lisa, because I know that you probably had some of the same feelings going through your stuff. So how with the therapy that you did individually, and as I'm sure setting that boundary was very painful and scary and hard. But how has therapy and working on yourself and working on the marriage, How is it different today for you?
Oh, gosh. It was, it was the darkest time. And like I said, I was very scared. I was scared of where he might end up with the depression and the substances and all of that. And it was very scary. And I was angry, It's like, how can you do this? We have this beautiful child and everything's falling apart,
Yeah.
And so there was all of that. And at the same time, I was in a position of kind of defending you to a family, who were like, well, why do you put up with that? And it's like, because I love him and I know who he is. And you all should know too. So there was a little anger at family too. And, there was just a lot going on. And it's funny when you were talking about therapy, Jason, and couples therapy, and I was thinking, you said you go every week, which we did at first. We went, and our therapist was so wonderful because we were broke, and he was so cool about charging us not much at all, or could build up a balance and pay him. And he was just, because it's his mission, to really do this. And but I still remember, I don't know if you remember this, our first appointment, we ended up getting this huge argument about our alarm clock. Do you remember this?
No.
And I think it's like the perfect symbol of the codependence that was going on and this was like pretty much before smartphones, I think. But we had one alarm clock on our, dresser or whatever. And we would argue about what time we were going to set it for because I got up earlier and you would be mad about it. And I just remember he kind of laughed and he looked at us. He said, why don't you have 2 alarm clocks? And it was like, I think it's just this great metaphor of where we were in this like enmeshed, codependent, nightmare for a while. And then it was like, well, let's start with the baby step.
Right.
The alarm clock.
You're in charge of when you get up. You're in charge of when you get up, So, and 20 years later, it's like I said, he's great. And we've moved beyond that phase.
I love it.
So how do you feel as a mom? How do you feel as you're with your marriage today with all these growth steps?
I'm so grateful. I just could not be more grateful. And I feel just every single day I wake up and the first thing I do before I get out of bed is just gratitude of everything I have, I have a roof, a lovely house now, and but it's not about the stuff. Again, it's about our relationship. We made it through such hard times, which made us so much stronger. And most important is we raised this really amazing kid who is just so full of heart. And I feel like because of our therapy, we've been really able to gift him with that ability to really communicate well emotionally. And I'm just so grateful for that and for the very close relationship we have with him and how honest he is with us. And just, you become a parent, you have no idea, like, what are your kids going to be like? What's going to happen? How's this going to look? And I never would have, you can't predict, you would never know. And where we are is never where I would have thought. And I love him. He's great, but he's not like what I thought. And he's just amazing. And you bring these lives into the world and do the best you can. And I think because of the therapy and all the hard work we did, we really did the best we could and focused so hard on parenting and being healthy as a couple.
And I guess it's one of the things I would say, too, that Ethan has also helped and continues to help us as well he started doing that when he was probably 5. Is one of my first memories of him coaching us around what he needed and also what's healthiest. And the specific example I'm thinking of is I would come into his room and I'd be like, geez, buddy, you got to clean up all your stuff. And he goes, Daddy, when you come in and you are telling me all of the things that I need to do when you're saying goodnight, I don't want you to say goodnight to me. I don't want you to come in here. And it's like, wow, okay, I need to back away from all my critique around that stuff for end of day and beginning of day. Because what's the lesson we want our kids to take away? It's not, oh, your room isn't clean enough. Oh, you've done this mistake, et cetera. It's much more of, I love you and I care about you so much. And
no, I understand. I'm following completely. What's kind of just really coming to me right now is, what would your guys' and I know it's a very broad question, but there's so many people out there that are in relationships that struggle. And, a thing that I always heard when it comes to a relationship is, anything worth having is not easy, right? So, it takes a lot of hard work. But if there's a couple out there that's listening right now that's going through a hard time, what would be some of the advice you guys would give them from a couple's perspective?
The thing that I would say is also communicate. It's so imperative to talk through and be present with your emotions. I have felt that oftentimes our biggest arguments and our biggest problems are occurring when I'm not in touch with my emotions and not aware of what are the underlying things. Because usually being a guy, oftentimes the way that emotions get expressed are anger. Okay, in varying degrees therein. And so it's like, oh, I'm angry with you. Oh, I'm frustrated with you. Instead of the underlying, what's my sadness? What am I afraid of? My scare, or how am I hurt? Right. The sad, scared, hurt type of going back and exploring what's underlying these emotions helps me then to get more in touch with so I can come to a place of I felt really disrespected from whatever a context or a situation is. And that's the biggest thing I would say.
Oh, yeah. Communication's everything. And taking time outs too. We take time outs from each other. Or like if we're really in a heated argument, it's like, I'm going to just go for a walk or a drive or instead of just, it just gets worse and worse. And like one or both of us, okay, I'm out, and knowing that like I might be really upset and I might be the one to leave or he might be the one to leave. But I also know deep down, we'll get through it. Right. Yeah, we're both super angry right now. But I also know 35 years, we have the tools to do this and we love each other and we'll figure it out. Even if I'm really hurt or really upset, I know we know how to talk through it. Maybe not in that moment, but.
So let me say this. There's a word coming up in my brain, which is, before, when you were scared, you didn't feel like you could trust. But would you say your trust is super strong today?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have any doubts of who you are, your integrity. I don't have those fears. I used to worry all the time when he did start working again, that he would lose his job again, that he would do something that you'd end up getting let go or you would, whatever. It used to be just a constant state of fear of like, how long is this going to last until the shoe falls again, and that's long gone.
What do you think, like going into that is, what do you guys do to continue? I know you guys said you still see your therapist once a month, but what are some things that you guys do and some of the tools that you rely on to, maintain this life that you guys have acquired? It's taking you a lot of hard work, but obviously it doesn't just go away and you don't have to do anything anymore, right? There's constant work that still needs to be, made, and it does get easier through the process. But what are some of those things you guys do to have this, beautiful marriage that you guys have and the beautiful effective communication and being able to be a team, right?
Well, earlier talking about codependency, I was so reliant on him, like expecting you to be everything for me. I didn't have my own friendships my own friendships, or like pursuing the writing, all of that. I wasn't doing any of that. And I think for me, I know it's been so healthy is like, I have my own life, I have my own career and my friends, and I have all my well is filled in many ways in addition to my really awesome marriage. Mm-hmm. And that's super healthy. And I'd say same for you.
Very much so. Yeah, that was a huge turning point for us, because when Lisa decided to pour herself into her writing and explore that area, we became more interdependent versus the dependent. And you're familiar with the dependency continuum of we start off very dependent, we go to independent, and then we branch back out and become interdependent. Right. And I would say Lisa's move into more of her work on herself really helped our marriage so much. As I would say, the work that I did on myself as well made it so that I'm able to come from a place more of love, care, and compassion for her problems, but also with myself.
Well, what I'm really hearing from Lisa, though, is the independence created self-worth.
Yes, very, very much so.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
True.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
We also do date nights. Big proponent of date nights.
Oh, that's huge. Especially right after Ethan was born. One of the problems that we saw is that we were pouring so much energy into him and not enough time into us. And
can we talk about that for a minute? Because that's very, very important. So, I mean, can you elaborate on that more?
Yes, absolutely. I didn't realize, I would think, we have our time at home together, et cetera. But needing to be away from our son and be away from the house and the environment there and be able to treat each other to just, even if it's just a very inexpensive meal or going to a park together where we could sit down and talk. That was instrumental in really changing for our relationship to help us grow. It started off with, okay, we'll eke out a date night every 6 weeks. Then it became every month. Then 2 weeks, then week, you know, and how critical that is. Because what I would see is we would bicker over little tiny crap like all the time when we didn't get that. And we were around each other all the time. And we'd say, we just need some time apart. And okay, that's a little bit of it. A lot of the time was we need really good quality time together.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was
That's
like...
awesome.
That's because you're changing that environment around you, right? I mean, you guys are around each other, obviously under the same roof, but you have the chaos of the family, it's the dynamic work, all these things, as opposed to removing yourself from the environment to really just get connected on a interpersonal level.
Right.
And by the way, I mean, I have to say, COVID brought a lot of that energy back too, because we couldn't get out. Because we couldn't. We were around each other oftentimes in somewhat unhealthy ways, because there is no way in which we could escape out per se to just have our good quality us time.
For sure.
Or separate time with, friends and all.
Absolutely.
All of us. Everybody suffered from that.
Wow.
But,
So, wow, you guys have really said some amazing things today, and I'm so honored. So if you were to give our listeners one action for the day in relationship, what would it be? What one action would you say to do for their marriage?
Oh, boy. I would say, this is in particular for men, is to stop and explore what emotions and feelings you have that you're going through, and dive into that and talk about it in depth with your partner. Because one of the things that I found is if I can start to plumb and explore some of those depths and the pain, oftentimes, through that vulnerability and through that processing, it helps you to be more present with another.
Wow.
I love that. I'll be doing that tonight.
One of the big components in that too is you need to choose the right time and place. I mean, you can't do it in the middle of the chaos and craziness of our day-to-day lives. You need to do it through kind of setting aside sacred space, really, and in a place where we feel safe and comfortable. Because I used to try and just, I'm going to unload some of this onto Lisa, and that's not cool to do. You need to kind of preface and build up to, we're wanting to work through some of those things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Timing is everything.
It's true.
It is.
It is. I mean, that's something that we got to work on deeply. No, Erik, what you're saying is in direct correlation of what I've done over the last particular couple of years. It has really brought tremendous growth to my relationship, specifically this last year, is because I didn't have the right tools to communicate And my personal, the emotions and the feelings I was going through were projected in anger, arguments, frustration, and it just made things worse. Right. And I think, again, it was really getting to a place of like, look, internalizing and understanding and taking that moment for myself to realize where I'm at, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and to tap into that and be like, hey, look, Ashley, I'm very overwhelmed, as opposed to just my anger of I did whatever it may be, it's not effective, as opposed to like, hey, look, setting that time up. Hey, can we take some time this afternoon to be able to talk? I need a couple minutes with you, and making sure the timing's right. But really hitting that in, and just like after I've evaluated, it's much more effective as opposed to the screaming to say, hey, look, like I want to make amends. Number one, I take ownership in the way I've responded and the way I've been, I've reacted to everything. But, I want you to know that I'm in a very fragile state. I'm very overwhelmed. I have a lot that's going on. And explain myself, as opposed to an attacking. It's just taking ownership of what I'm going through. It's caused a lot more growth in our relationship. And what that's also done by me doing that is, she's not been perfect in that either. It's also created that opportunity for her to start doing that as well. So it's just created a much more safe environment. It's a safe and trusted environment that she can come to, and for me as well. And that's really developed is through that is by us getting in touch with ourselves. It's brought us closer as a couple.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. It's interesting because what that was bringing up for me was I am my most snarky, passive aggressive, pissy, whatever term you want to use for it. I feel like I'm the biggest when I am not in touch with whatever emotion is going on at the time, and I'm not aware of what the sad, scared hurt is, and so it always ends up coming out of this diffused anger.
It's projection.
Yeah, and it isn't until I stop and am centering myself to start to get in touch with that. But I rely on Lisa a ton for being able to process through a lot of that, because it isn't until those vulnerable times that I'm able to really work through that much more effectively.
I mean, the beauty behind that too, like my last thought on it is it really allows the opportunity not only in your relationship to have that communication, but even when you walked in here, you know what I mean? I was talking, how you doing? I'm tired. And I was able to identify that. I'm not sleep deprived. I'm emotionally drained. You know what I mean? And it's allowed me to be able to have that communication with other people. It's like with grandmother passing, there's a lot of emotions. It's like, it allows me to be able to communicate more effectively just in my day-to-day relationships.
Amen.
So I think that's just another thing, is it helps you in all areas.
Yes.
So
thank you.
Well, you guys, unfortunately we've run out of time.
I just want to say I love you guys so much. Thank you. You're an inspiration to me. And I hope I can live long enough and get to do all these things later in life that you guys, you've really paved a beautiful way for me. I always told, and just to tell our listeners, with all the amazing stuff at career-wise that I've gotten to do, I've told Erik and Lisa that they have the wealthiest life because of family. There's nothing, you can drive all the cars, you can be on red carpets, but what you guys have as a family unit is like, it's just a great gift, and it's the best. So I love you.
Love you.
Something that comes to mind when you say that is, being wealthy doesn't make you happy. Being happy makes you wealthy.
Oh, come on, brother. Preach it. Preach it, Jay.
Thank you guys
I'll
so
drink
much
to that
for
coffee.
being here. You guys, what a powerful story. I mean, again, as I'm going through it, I've learned a lot, and you guys have made me think in other areas of where I can be a better husband, a better friend. So I appreciate that.
I can tell you how to be a better friend.
Yeah. All right. We're done.